Looking back on the week that was and forward to the week ahead. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
All across fantasy land, welcome in. It is week 9 of the Fantasy Football Hustle. Boy, I'm excited to be here, but Dwain, I got to say I'm a little bummed because, we've all been on pins and needles this past 24 hours, and it doesn't look like my guy is going to pull through. I was a big Kanye supporter, and it doesn't seem like he's going to get the votes. So, I just want to get that out of the way at the start of the show.
Oh, I mean, it just depends. How many mail-in votes are you waiting on, Drake?
He's got mine. It's in there. But welcome in, everybody. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Brian Drake from FightingChanceFantasy.com, joined as always by the analytical assassin, Dwain McFarland. He is from Pro Football Focus. You can check that out, pff.com, and also EstablishTheRun.com. That's where you read his utilization report. It's, dare I say, the best thing going in fantasy football. And if you want to listen to the best thing in fantasy football, I think it's right here on this show, okay? And what I want to do now is just kind of say thank you. Thank you to all you folks out there who are listening, subscribing, leaving the reviews on iTunes. We see them. We see all the comments on YouTube. So appreciate you guys. The chat room is alive and well. We're definitely going to get into a lot of those questions. And Dwayne, in your real job, you deal with COVID-19 supplies and all this stuff that's way over my pay grade. But COVID-19 is a real thing in the United States, and especially in football. And it, boy, oh boy, is rearing its ugly head on Thursday Night Football. Why they have to play this game is beyond me. But we have quite the bloodbath with San Francisco and Green Bay trying to get after it. So let's just, off the top of here, we got Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Kendrick Bourne, and left tackle Trent Williams all on the COVID list. They're out. We knew Jimmy G and George Kittle weren't going to play. So now we're left, Dwayne, with Nick Mullins, some combo of Jordan Reed and Ross Dwelly, Jermichael Hasty at running back, and probably you and I playing wide receiver. So what in the world can you do in San Francisco? Do you dare pick up Trent Taylor or Richie James? Are we just punting?
Yeah, is this I didn't read if Pettis had been exposed, but how bad did it have to get for Pettis to this is the week he actually gets released? I'm like, kid, this is but it should have been Pettis says, dude, Drake, I have a beer tonight. Are we not supposed to do this? Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot. I was so upset over the Kanye West stuff that
it's okay. This Drake, it's the only beer of the Dallas Cowboys, which is literally worse. It's worthless. So
yeah, you have to drink about 16 of those tall boys to get through a game with, whatever JV quarterback they're going to roll out this week. We'll get to them. I got them in the notes, but
I'm sure you do. Accurate story though. Accurate story about 16 tall boys. That's what it takes. That's why I don't watch, because I can't drink 16 tall boys and survive anymore.
Man, I'm so glad I got rid of Zeke. But again, we'll get into all that. So we got 49ers here. A lot of my buddies are, they're excited. Like, hey, I picked up Kendrick Bourne this week. I'm going to slide him in. He's going to get all kinds of targets. No, you're not, because he just got hit with COVID. So in my opinion, you can't play any of these receivers. Maybe if Jordan Reed gets activated, Ross Dwelly might be a thing. But, what do you think on the San Francisco side?
Yeah, somebody's going to have to, catch passes, but it's not like you're going to be super excited about any of them, just with all the issues that they've got going on. While the 49ers offense and Kyle Shanahan can work, a lot of magic just through their scheme, through play action, and all the cool things we talk about, quite often on the show, so people don't probably need us to repeat it. At the same time, you've got to have, weapons, at least a couple, right, that the other team, respects. So they'll probably try to lean on their running game as much as they can. They'll still use play action. The tight ends will be involved. But I have no clue what to really expect, because if I'm Green Bay, I'm loading up literally just to stop the run. And I'm letting my corners play one-on-one. I'm basically daring you, to beat me deep with a midget. like Trent Taylor or whoever else they get on the field. It's really sad for the 49ers. Like literally everyone is hurt. Like this could be like the week where it's like, oh man, they got Jalen Hurd. No, they don't. They lost him in the preseason. It's just, it's a rough situation, and this is a team that's really dealt with that. Like I want to say 3 out of the last 4 years. And then the 1 year they didn't, they go to the Super Bowl, where they've just had a lot of injuries. So yeah, man, I'm not too excited about any of it. If I can, I just want to avoid the whole thing. If I were, to put a chip down because I had to, it would be on one of the running backs.
How about on the running back side in Green Bay? We're not sure if Aaron Jones is going to play. They keep saying, oh, it might be a game time decision. And, he's got the bad calf. Jamal Williams, A.J. Dillon, they're on the COVID list now. So they're going to roll out fifth-year running back Tyler Irvin, who's mostly been a returner. He's had 10 rushing attempts in 5 years. And Dexter Williams, who in 2019 had 5 rushes for a whopping 11 yards. So if you need a long shot flyer, which guy are you putting a chip on? I mean, I actually picked up Tyler Irvin in a league or two, but I have no interest in playing him. I kind of just did it to block somebody else in case he does go off.
Yeah, I don't want to play either one really because I have no clue which one's going to get more of the work. But I'm pretty certain, I shouldn't say certain. My guess is that Jones won't play because if I'm the Packers, I'm thinking, I don't really need him to beat this 49ers team. Not wrong. You can lose any game, but just with all the problems the 49ers have, like Green Bay would literally have to just implode. So one of those two guys or both of them are going to have some valuable fantasy points. I mean, if I'm, thinking about any of the Packers, I mean, really the only two I want to play outside of Aaron Rodgers are Devontae Adams, and I'd be willing to throw Thielen in, if that's what I need at tight end. Otherwise, I don't want to play any of the other tertiary players because they're not even really going to need them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not like this is going to be a high-scoring game. I mean, Rodgers could just go off, I guess, but 49ers defense, despite, a lot of the issues, has still been decent. So my thought is it'll be a lower-scoring game, but, Green Bay will win by, 10 to 14 points.
I was nervous about Thielen coming into this week because I know he came off a little ankle issue. He had a bye in week 5. This week, I guess he redeemed himself. 7 targets, caught 5 balls for 79. He probably could have had an even bigger day. Rodgers kind of underthrew him and he had to fall down. He probably would have scored on like a 60-yard touchdown. But any thoughts on Thielen? Do you think he's a legit tight end 1 in 2020 that's a total wasteland, or is he just kind of an up and down mix and match guy? If the matchup's not there, you can just cut him and find somebody else.
Well, I mean, when he's been healthy, I think he's a tight end 1. We had a little blip on the radar, but it was just because he was dealing with an injury, for a couple of weeks. But I don't like his routes run. They're not very strong. So. They were up in the 60s and now they've been at 59, 50, and then he just peaked back over into 62%. You really want to be in the 70 to 80% range. But the good thing for Thielen is his targets per route run, is better than his actual target share, right? So what that means is when he is actually in a route, Rodgers is looking for him, more often, than he is some of his other targets. So like, for example, this last week, Thielen had 16% of the targets, but he had 23%. He was targeted on 23% of his routes. So, he is actively involved. I would say that, it's a 1A, 1B, 1C is all Devontae Adams, right? And then you've got like, your C players. And I think Tanyan's like at the top of that list because Valdez-Scantling just hasn't been able to pull it together. They even tried to get Equanimeous Brown involved a little bit. They just like guys that have names that are so long, like they make me have to expand like my spreadsheet cells. So I think the guy that could come back here, in the next week, or two is Alan Lazard. And I do think that, based on what we saw from him earlier in the season, that could hurt Thielen, because then you do have a legit additional option that Rodgers can look to besides Aaron Jones and the running backs. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Thielen after that.
Yeah, and just a heads up, a lot of you guys play in Yahoo leagues, and we reference players and their percentage owned in Yahoo leagues. The default Yahoo trade deadline is next Saturday. So just be aware, check your league settings. But if you have a default setting, most likely your league is going to stop trading next Saturday. So if you want to get ahead of the game and start wheeling and dealing, do it before next week. Hey, we're talking tight ends, and we love checking out our chat room here. Steven Dominguez, friend of the show, he chimes in. Let's see. He's got to find a tight end. Oh, my God, look at this crew. Dan Arnold, Greg Olson, Jordan Reed, full point PPR.
Yeah, it's Jordan Reed, hands down, for the rest of your season. You just don't know if you're going to have him tomorrow night, right? If you do, it's great. Problem solved. You just roll with him as long as he's healthy. You know what I mean? Who knows? That could be a quarter. That could be 3 games. It definitely won't be the rest of the season. We know that. But you just ride Reed as long as you can. And then, just try to stream some guys behind him until maybe you hit on something like a Tanyan from earlier in the season. So that would be my order, that I would put, on those guys. I'm just trying to think, Drake. The other guy that, you don't lose sight. I don't know if he's available, but Irv Smith, set a new high again, 3 weeks in a row. Like his routes run, have jumped, and he was up in the 80% range. They just hardly ran any plays. So I do think Irv Smith's going to, he'll be, a bit up and down, but I think he'll be in and out of the tight end one conversation, from a point standpoint, here and there, moving forward. Trying to think who else. Steven would know. He would have already looked, but a lot of people dropped Austin Hooper. Mm-hmm. If that happened, even though he's on bye that doesn't help you this week because he's on bye. But Hooper is going to be probably one of the top 2 targets, right, in the Browns offense, with OBJ out for the season. So that's a guy that if you can add him speculatively, this week, a week before, if you've got room, do that. If not, make sure you get him next week. A lot of your league mates won't know because, it'll just show that he scored 0 points the last week.
Yeah, I'm looking here in Yahoo. Check out some percentages of roster. Like Robert Tanyan's only rostered in 68% of leagues. Jimmy Graham, 55%. I'm trying to see. Let's see. Who else might be out there? Gesicki. We had a Hunter Henry question. He's owned in 92% of leagues. Goddard. And don't forget Goddard and Ertz. They could have been dropped in leagues. We had a question in the chat room, Dwayne, about, while we're talking tight ends here, Hunter Henry. Why is he rated highly every week? He's done literally nothing. He caught 4 balls this past week. His last 2 weeks before that, he had 15 targets, but he's just not getting any yardage at all. Well, Justin Herbert's setting the world on fire, and he just seems to be forgetting about his tight end. Any thoughts on that?
He's just been unlucky. If you look, he has everything you want from a tight end. He's running routes on average almost at 80%. That's elite, right? They're not asking him to stay in and block that often. His target shares have been 30, 27, 15, 13, 24, 15. This last week, only 10. But, that's 8, 8, 7, 3, 7, 6, 4. They just have several mouths to feed there, right? It's one of those situations where, Keenan Allen's going to get his, but then you have Mike Williams who gets involved. The running backs get involved, which Eckler will be even more involved, right, when he comes back. And then you have Hunter Henry. So it's just one of those deals where, they work it around. But Henry's going to have some explosion games, with as well as Herbert is playing. Like, it's coming, right? He's going to have one of those weeks where it's like, oh, Hunter Henry, 5 catches, 60 yards, and 2 T's. Like, he's got one of those coming. Like, I can almost guarantee it. He's going to score some touchdowns. He's a top 12 tight end for me. If you look at him on the season, the other nice thing, a lot of tight ends, their first read targets, Drake, they're kind of an afterthought, often, a lot of tight ends are in the 60, 70% range, not Hunter Henry. 84% of his targets come on the first read, so he's getting a lot of first, looks. They're using play action a lot more this year. So 33% of his targets come on play action. Which is slightly above, league average for tight ends, which is right around 30%. So, I like him. He gets to line up in the slot. His ADOT is solid, for a tight end. It's right at an 8, 8 to 10 is where you want it to be. So, Hunter Henry to me is a guy that if I can go buy him, I will. You just haven't had it hit yet is all. He and who was I just about to think of? Drake. Sorry. Anyway, I'll come back to it. But Hayden Hurst, sorry. Those two guys are kind of in the same bucket for me. And Hunter Henry, I have just slightly higher, but they both have the same thing going on. They're getting the targets, they're getting the routes, they're getting good play action looks, all that kind of stuff that you want to see from a top tier tight end. They've just been unlucky.
We're not going to talk a lot of waiver wire on this show. Usually we do, but sorry, we're a day late.
If folks have questions, they can ask us. Like if you still have waivers or you got somebody like you're doing now, just ask us. We're sorry. We're sorry we missed it last night. It's my fault, not Drake's.
And no, it wasn't because of the election. We actually just had stuff to do. But on bye this week is the Bengals, Browns, Rams, and Eagles. The reason I bring up the waiver wire is because we talked about on there this season while we're talking Chargers included Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. And lo and behold, Troymaine Pope comes out of nowhere this week, supplants Josh Kelly as this second running back, carries the ball 10 times, 67 yards rushing. Now, here's what's going to happen, Dwayne. They're going up against Vegas, who's given up more rushing touchdowns than anybody this season. Josh Kelly, who I just dropped in several leagues, is going to rush for 3 touchdowns. I mean, this is a mess. I don't want anything to do with these guys. If someone's got Justin Jackson or Kelly or whatever, what's your advice?
Yeah, Justin Jackson is really the only one. So Jackson, what we've seen is 2 out of the last 3 weeks, he's really had the Austin Eckler role, right? You and I were kind of on it week 5, week 7, he kind of crapped the bed. But then last week he came back and did it again. So if you really compare Justin Jackson to the role that Austin Eckler had, before his injury, which is about a little under half the carries, getting more of the routes, getting more of the targets, that's really where he's operating. He's so target rate for Justin Jackson, 21%, 15%, 12%. That's very healthy numbers. Troymaine Pope didn't see any of the long down and distance, didn't see any of the 2-minute work. That all went to Justin Jackson. So it's kind of like what you said. What's happening now is where it was Kelly and Jackson were splitting. It's like Jackson has still retained everything he had, and Pope and Kelly are splitting what used to just be Kelly's. And so, yeah, I think it's fine to drop Josh Kelly in small to medium formats and deeper leagues. You might want to put a hold on him, but I play in a ton of deeper leagues. I just did 21 waiver wire, did 21 teams before I got on the show. You guys know me. I own Josh Kelly a ton. He got the opportunity like we hoped, but he just hasn't been able to come through. I dropped him on 4 or 5 of those teams if there was something there that I felt good about. And those are, what do you call them? Skank leagues, like where a lot of time there's nothing. And like I dropped him for Deonta Foreman several times just for the upside of Foreman if Derrick Henry goes down, because Foreman we saw get involved this last week. And really, I mean, if you look at that roster, he's the next closest thing to Derrick Henry, right?
That's a great point.
And that team, they want to run the ball with that style of player. Like they truly believe in establish the run and punish the other team like that. That's in their DNA. They're passing the ball more, they're running more plays, which is all great. But I think that Foreman would probably step in to, my guess right now would be, he's probably going to get 80 to 90% of Derrick Henry's work. And then you would see McNichols or some of these other guys, or maybe even Darrington Evans work his way back into the good graces of the coaching staff once he's, off IR. Those guys can work in the passing down role, but that's kind of what you're already seeing with Henry anyway, right? Henry's getting a few targets every game, but he's not running a ton of routes.
Mm-hmm.
So Foreman is kind of I like him, Drake, as a great, he's the equivalent of Mike Davis. He was the handcuff nobody was thinking about, right? Mm-hmm. If something happened, you'd be like, holy crap, I'm going to win my next 4 games just because I have Deonta Foreman, who's going to get 25 carries each game.
Yeah, remember how many times we were talking him up and people are adding him because, he's gonna take that job in Houston, and he just never did because he was that fantasy Santa Claus. You're just like, he's gonna come around once this year, and then they go, he's not real, and then hopefully my kids aren't watching this.
He's got the right skill set for what they want there. So and we have seen Foreman produce in some spots. So anyway, that's a name a lot of people probably aren't thinking of, but that's probably the person I added the most tonight.
I like that. A guy you guys probably added a ton last week was DJ Dallas. We talked about him. hey, he rushed 18 times on Sunday, and he also caught all 5 of his targets. He's going up against a Bills team, though, that allows the 7th fewest points to running backs. He obviously is well ahead of Travis Homer. I don't believe we're going to see Carson or Carlos Hyde. Anything Pete Carroll tells you is probably a lie. I last night watched the 30 for 30 on USC, and my wife was watching it with me because I couldn't take the election coverage. I'm like, just tell me the end result. That's all I care about. So I'm like, oh, cool. This I don't know what they call it.
We'll
Trojan.
tell you in a month.
Yeah. So I'm watching this thing, and she's like, isn't that the Seattle coach on there? And I'm like, oh yeah. Keep watching it. This gets really good. And all of a sudden, the Reggie Bush and this happens, and he skates out of town, and Lendell White just blows him up like, yep, he got the hell out of Dodge as soon as the crap hit the fan. And so again, don't believe anything Pete Carroll ever tells you about an injury, because he's just trying to BS you. Any other thoughts?
He's just like super positive about everything.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any thoughts. I mean, we'll see. I was just actually trying to look right now. Hang on while we got, folks on here. I'm looking at Seattle's, their practice report. So Carson was a DNP today. Hyde was a DNP today. Dallas was a full, participant. The one guy that we can keep an eye on, eventually at some point here, Drake, they could get Rashad Penny back. So
yeah,
if you're actually somebody in our chat room last week had brought that up. But again, it's not like it's going to be something that's going to happen this week. But he's eligible right now. Like they can bring him back at this point. And so once he's ready, he could be a guy that could get in the mix. And again, in the style of offense they're running this year, which is, the lead backs only seeing 10 to 12 carries, but they're getting more targets. If Penny's fully healthy, man, I think he's a good fit for what they're trying to do, because we've seen him be a decent receiver, out of the backfield. So, he's a guy that, again, you would need to be in a super deep league, or if you've got a league that's got IR spots, or maybe you've got extra IR spots for COVID, and it doesn't have to be a player with COVID. Maybe your league just expanded IR spots, period. That's the kind of guy that, if you can stash him now, again, has to be a deeper type format, but I think Penny is worth that kind of stash.
In Miami, Dwain, we lost Myles Gaskin to an MCL sprain. He's going to miss about 3 weeks, and they did end up trading at the deadline for DeAndre Washington. He's a handy little back from the Chiefs. They also have Jordan Howard. He's been a healthy scratch most weeks, and Matt Breida, who didn't practice today due to a hamstring. So we have a question in our chat room from Joshua Pringle. Fantastic insight on Foreman. Thoughts on Breida taking over the Gaskin role? And I would say, well, he needs to practice first of all, but I mean, this could be, are we seeing, who's the white kid that was there last year? What the hell was his name? Patrick Laird. And they've got Lynn Bowden is there, and God only knows.
I don't think Bowden's going to do anything. They like him more as a receiving threat. And,
I like Howard. I think they're going to bring him in and just try to hide Tua.
I don't know. That's just not the style of offense that they're running. They could try, but
they can't hide him from Arizona, though, because you're going to be behind.
Yeah, and I don't think they're necessarily going to have to hide Tua, right? That's just the way the game worked out last week, dude. I mean, they just got way out on the Rams, and they didn't need to expose Tua. I don't think we've seen, what Tua is going to be capable of. Now, you know me. I wasn't crazy about Tua coming in and what that meant for Devontae Parker and for Preston Williams and, for the rest of those guys. But again, we haven't seen, what it's going to be like when Tua, actually, really has to play quarterback. I think they're going to have plenty of things, ready for him to roll with. They just didn't have to last week. I do think that Breida gets the first shot. To your point, he's got to practice. He was a DNP today with a hamstring. So I don't know how bad that is. They could just be being really, cautious because they know they're down. But I think it is telling, right, that they went and traded for Washington. Whenever the trade for Washington tells me that they're out on Howard, dude. Howard's got a very specific role, and I think they'll let him play that if he can. He'll probably end up, being active now, but I don't see him being a big part of the plans. It's just not the style of offense that they're running, So we'll see. I could be wrong. They could change things up, but I just think Howard is so one-dimensional That's what they like about Washington, to your point. He can do it all. Breida can really do both. I don't think they like Breida's pass blocking. I think that's Breida's biggest issue right now, and I think that's honestly how Gaskin beat him out. I think that's what happened this preseason, as far as I can tell. But yes, I agree with Josh. I think that Breida gets the first shot at it. But you remember last year when Kenyon Drake came over and like how many days did he even have like to integrate? Like they had a Thursday night game. I want to say he like came over like that Monday or something.
Yeah.
In a trade and like blew up the 49ers for however many yards, a guy that, didn't even have a full week of practice. Don't sleep on Washington. If Breida doesn't practice again tomorrow, my bet is that Washington, as long as he gets through the COVID stuff, right? I mean, they can't, the different rules they have right now for when the player can join the team. But I wouldn't be surprised if he led the backfield this week.
You're going to have minimally 3 weeks without Gaskin. And we're not sure if, the MCL sprain, that could linger. We don't know. Sure. Mm-hmm. Maybe they made that trade knowing Breida's hammy is more injured than they want to lead on.
That or Gaskin is more injured than they're leading on.
True.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree.
Pickup well, here's another team with running back questions, and it's the Indianapolis Colts. Jordan Wilkins, of all people, suddenly appeared after we found out Jonathan Taylor tweaked his ankle. Wilkins goes off for $113 and a score. Adding to the intrigue now, Wilkins popped up on the injury report today, and he was limited in practice with a groin issue. Our favorite satellite back, Nyheim Hines, rushed 5 whole times for 8 yards, but did catch 3 balls for 54 yards and 2 scores. Whew, boy, how the mighty have fallen here. We were big on Jonathan Taylor, but it's just not happening, my friend. Yeah. I don't know if you go out and pick up Jordan Wilkins and we think he's going to be a thing, but
I think here's what I think. This is what I think, is happening, with that team. It's funny. The whole Jonathan Taylor thing is right. They say he got hurt, but they didn't even know. The coach didn't even know until after the game that he was hurt. So I think it's kind of interesting. Like, is Jonathan Taylor hurt, or are they just kind of protecting him because he's sucking? Like, he doesn't look good. He doesn't look explosive. He doesn't look like he's reading the field well. When you watch him, it looks like Jordan Howard. It looks like, one of these guys that were like, that's nice. That's nice. But he doesn't look like this talent that we all thought that he was. And again, maybe he's been hurt for several weeks and we didn't know. That could be the case too. I mean, I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor sucks, but something's definitely wrong. And Jordan Wilkins, he's a capable back. We've known this. We've talked about him in previous years on the hustle, like in a pinch. And, he's a good receiving back out of the backfield. He's kind of a jack of all trades, and he looked good. And I think he's been nursing the groin injury actually for a couple of weeks. I think Wilkins has. So I don't know that that's anything new for him, but here's what I think is going to happen. I think what just happened is it's really been a 3-back committee all year. Even before, when Marlon Mack was there in week 1 as a 3-back committee, then when Marlon Mack was gone, it was still a 3-back committee, right? And I was even talking about that in the utilization report, like how Jordan Wilkins was coming in and closing out games. He was seeing certain, duties. I think now what's going to happen is I basically think it's going to turn into, it's still 3 backs, but it's probably going to be a hot hand approach, like between him and Taylor as to who the lead guy is each week. I think that's the best case for Wilkins. They've still invested a 2nd-round pick in Jonathan Taylor, so I would still lean to him. But right now, man, you can't start Jonathan Taylor, especially not against the Ravens, and I wouldn't want to run Jordan Wilkins out there either unless I'm in an absolute freaking pinch. Now, if we hear Taylor's not going to play, great, because, Wilkins will catch some balls. What's interesting, Drake, is, Taylor last week, he got all of the long down and distance work. So he finally got this positive thing, and then they reduced his rushing attempts to he only got 38% of them, and Wilkins got over 50%. So it's just how they hodgepodge this stuff together is so weird. And then, Burton has got a rushing touchdown 2 weeks in a row.
Unbelievable.
What the hell? What does that tell you though? There's something going on with Jonathan Taylor. If you got to get the ball to Burton, down inside the 5 as your back, something's going on.
This is one of those things where we hear about it every offseason, and some insider will say like, "Oh well, we all knew that, but we didn't report it that Jonathan Taylor was dealing with an MCL sprain since week 2." And like, "Oh, gee, thanks." Which I could have known that, Jake Glazer, 2 seconds before the game started.
I think something like that's going on. I think there's something to it.
Let's go over to Detroit, where Matty Stafford was placed on the COVID list today. He doesn't have it necessarily. His wife put on Instagram. Yeah, see, we're digging into Instagram posts of quarterbacks' wives and not just Ryan Tannehill's. She said that she's clear, he's clear. If he can get through the protocol and test negative before the game, he will play. But just, keep that in the back of your mind. He won't be throwing, though, to Kenny Golladay, who injured his hip on Sunday. So we kind of have this just mess of an offense. They're going up against the Vikings this week, and we've got Marvin Jones, who was tied for the weekly lead in end zone targets last week, and DeAndre Swift, and, of course, Adrian Peterson, who just won't go away. So Dwayne, I want you to just touch on these receivers here. Marvin Jones, you said he was out there in some big-time leagues you were in, and then in a deeper league, are you taking a shot on Quintez Cephas? Are you looking at Marvin Hall? And, again, what about this backfield?
Yeah, I think the best thing here is, and we saw it last week actually, right, is TJ Hawkinson and Marvin Jones get bumps. You can't really trust Marvin Hall. You can't trust Cephas. They tried to give Cephas this opportunity earlier in the season, and it just didn't work out. It'll probably end up being a matchup thing. Hall is the better vertical option. He can stretch the field. I mean, look, Hall's not like some spring chicken. This guy's been around. He's been around a while. He's like 27 or 28 years old, so this is not like some young, guy that's in his second year in the league that's like just blossoming into this player. And again, that doesn't mean, somebody that's 27 years old, can't like turn into something.
I'd kill to be 27 right now.
I would kill to be 27, Drake. Yes. Inject me with adrenaline. 104 air yards, 14.9 average depth of target last week for Marvin Jones, and Marvin Hall had 113 air yards, 18.8 yards average depth of target, and actually out targeted Jones, last week. Slightly outdid him from an air yards perspective, but was only 1 target behind Jones last week, 7 versus 6. But Hawkinson saw 9. So Hawkinson was 24%, of the targets last week. So I think Jones is squarely in the wide receiver 2 conversation right now, as long as, Stafford is going to start. But we did see this earlier in the season, right, when Kenny Golladay wasn't right and Jones didn't do anything. So as much as I say he's there, I mean, he could still, you could also argue with me, Dwayne, he should be a wide receiver 3, like tap your brakes. Like, I wouldn't argue with you. The only reason is I wonder if Jones has been dealing with something too, because this is a guy that we've seen, he's been pretty consistent, for multiple years now. So, and he and Stafford, they seem to have some mojo together. So I think you're fine, if you can get Marvin Jones in the lineups. Now, again, that Stafford needs to be playing. If Stafford's not playing, it's like abandoned ship, right? Hawkinson's still going to be okay because of where he operates. It won't be as good as having Stafford, but Marvin Jones, I'm going to steer clear if I find that Stafford's not playing, this weekend. But to your point, like Jones, he gets targeted quite often, in the end zone. If you look at him, for I don't have it up right now on the year, but last week, he had 3 targets in the end zone last week. He was, he was targeted. He hasn't been the first read target. He hasn't been a first read target that often, which I think will change, right? With Golladay being out, a little bit less to spread it around. But this is a spread it around offense, right? We kind of warned people about that earlier in the or before the season started, that Golladay and Jones are probably more similar than dissimilar, and they want to keep multiple guys involved. As far as the running backs go, so here's what's interesting. So Swift, despite, posting a fantasy dud, which we said could happen, right, based on, his utilization, even though it was improving, he played a season high 62% of the snaps, Drake, from a percentage standpoint. He ran a route on a season high 53% of dropbacks. His targets were 11%, which was down from the previous weeks of 13 and 16%. But he took all of the 2-minute drill work, which was up from the previous week. And he was out there for 42% of long down and distance, which was up from 22 and 29% in the previous 2 weeks. The Lions just didn't have the ball, that much, and they were trailing, pretty much, most of the game. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But even though Swift saw less opportunities like touch wise this week, what it did show us is like he still, even though he didn't score a lot of fantasy points, like from a utilization standpoint, he's to the point where he's basically game script proof, right? If they're really trailing by a lot, he's going to be fine. If they're ahead, which we've seen in recent weeks, he was fine. He's sharing time, but his role stays intact. He's the only one of the three guys that no matter what happens, he's got a role. Now, again, you're going to get bumps in the road just because anytime you have a 3-person, committee, it's going to be problematic. And Peterson, obviously this last week, because he got killed by the script.
Mm-hmm. I hate to bring you down, but we got to go and talk about your Dallas Cowboys. Zeke Elliott hasn't.
I'm just going to go on mute. You go ahead.
So Zeke Elliott hasn't rushed for 100 yards all season. He hasn't rushed for over 65 yards in 3 weeks and has only done that once in the past 7 weeks. Now, Dallas is going to start. I don't know. Let's look at this. Probably your neighbors named these kids Cooper Rush and Garrett Gilbert. They're going to fill in for Ben DiNucci, who got pulled off a community flag football team against the Steelers this week. So I traded Zeke in my big home league. I actually got a decent haul for him. And I'm going to say this to you guys as friends because you're drinking with me on a Wednesday night here on YouTube. If you can trade Zeke for anything on his name, you have to do it before the deadline. This is, in my mind, this is not going to change. And these receivers, good luck. I mean, if that deadline's next Saturday, like I said, those guys are getting offered in every single trade I send out.
Yeah. Hopefully you even made the move last week. We talked about this some last week, but yeah, you're right. I mean, and it's not going to look good after this week. They play the Steelers. Like Zeke may score 5 points. I mean, the Steelers are going to destroy the Cowboys. And I don't
watch the Cowboys win that game.
That's how this stuff, sometimes works. But man, that would blow me away, right? If that happened. But Zeke's not breaking long runs. Zeke isn't doing much with his opportunities in the passing game, and they're never around. They never get down to the 5-yard line. So there's not really, much to like right now. About the Cowboys offense. They got Gallup more involved last week because they stopped forcing him to be the deep guy, right? Basically now they're saying, hey, everybody just run 5- and 6-yard routes because that's all we have time to protect. So that's a positive for Michael Gallup. He's the only guy that has any kind of uptick, and I saw him available in multiple deep leagues tonight. I just left him. That's how bad. I watch the Cowboys every week. I put min bids on Gallup a couple of times when I just had an injured player, to drop. But I wasn't honestly, I was just put him at $2 and then I had Foreman at $2 after him. And I'm basically just hoping that I see someone else spent more on Gallup and I'll just be happy to take Foreman. But the problem for the Cowboys, the biggest problem, right, is for CeeDee Lamb. Because as they try to protect the quarterbacks, they're not running as much 11 personnel as last week. Only 48%, of their snaps did they use 3 wide receivers. Whereas, back whenever Dak was out there chunking it, they were the tops in the league. They were up in the 80% range. Last week, 48%. So basically, you are literally living on the edge with CeeDee Lamb. He does not need to be in lineups right now. If you're in a deeper league, don't cut him. Because you get Andy Dalton back maybe in a couple weeks, and you get some better matchups. You could see Lamb maybe get back involved a little bit more. But what we saw early in the season isn't going to last. And right now, he's still got, I want to say right in PPR, just because so many other players have been hurt and it's kind of top heavy right now. I want to say he's still wide receiver. He's in the wide receiver 20s. You could take a look at it, Drake, but you might still be able to move him in a trade just off the fact that somebody looks at it and goes, oh, wow, yeah, they're here and they're going to get Dalton back. And, I don't know, you may not be able to, but if you can, I would definitely move on from CeeDee Lamb. I don't want him in my lineups. I don't feel good about it. Same with Amari Cooper. He's still out there on the field, but, this whole offense, is just destroyed. They're going to see some better matchups eventually, right? And they'll probably get in a little bit of a groove, you hope, at some point. But again, I really wouldn't count on it.
This is insane. All right, I'm gonna have you guess. So he is the CD Lamb we're talking about here, as they say on the Conrad Thompson Wrestling Podcast. Pronouns, pal. I gotta say the guy's name. CD Lamb is wide receiver 22.
Yeah.
23. Excuse me, 23. Guess the receivers directly above and below him. You'd never guess this. It's unbelievable. I would not pick these two guys. So who's directly above him at receiver 22?
I don't know. Amari Cooper.
Julio Jones.
Julio Jones. Yeah. Below him, I would bet, is like T. Higgins.
It is T. Higgins.
Somebody. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Higgins was just a name that I was looking at, some of this earlier when I was writing, the article for PFF and Establish the Run, which I also did a day late because of other job, duties. But Higgins was surprising me. I knew Higgins was doing well, but I was like, man, wow, in the top 24, that's awesome. But think about it, man. Lamb, we loved him for the right reasons, and everything was working right with Dak, and Gallup was not seeing the work. It was Lamb, it was Amari. But looking at it now, Lamb's the rookie receiver we're the least excited about. I'd rather own Claypool. I'd way rather own Jefferson. I'd much rather own T. Higgins. He's probably a toss-up right now with Henry Ruggs, and I would probably lean to Ruggs just because I think Ruggs could grow into a bigger role. I feel like the arrows are all pointed downward for Dallas, and I just don't see, Drake, how they pull themselves out because, they have too many holes. You can't, and they're not going to go sign people, and they have guys that are gone for the season. Tyron Smith isn't coming back, So Lael Collins is not going to play this season. So those guys are done. And you even heard the announcers, this past week, I know you did because you were watching due to the Eagles, but literally the announcers knew their whole game plan. It's run duo behind Zack Martin. And that is literally all you have, and as good as Zack Martin is, you have to give him credit that even though the Eagles knew it was coming, it was working early, right? And he was dominating Fletcher Cox, but you can't live off of one guard. That's not enough.
I wish we had one guard in Philadelphia. The Eagles stink. Just my quick hit on Carson Wentz. I tweeted this out. Carson Wentz is that guy on your bar league softball team who, when you just need a single to win the game, is going to try to hit a 3-run home run. Every throw is 60 yards down the field. He could have 11 players open underneath, for a first down. He's throwing it 74 yards down the field. It's unbelievable. The risks this guy take. His eyes are always 1,000 yards down the field, but I digress. We do have guys in the chat room here. James Hunter looks like he's got a bunch of Cowboys. Dwayne, he wants to know, should he trade Zeke Elliott to get, I can tell the answer to this is going to be yes real quick, Kareem Hunt and Austin Eckler.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Get it done. You'll use Hunt for the next couple of weeks, and then Eckler comes back, and Hunt moves into your RB3, RB2 role. Yeah, absolutely.
Then he goes, should I hang up on Cooper?
You get whatever you can, for Amari Cooper. And sell on just what you said earlier, Drake. You give the perfect advice. Sell on their name value, but don't try to be too greedy. Hold yourself accountable to get something decent, but also gauge, if you only have one taker, again, play the part, right? And try to get as much as you can, but don't box yourself into a corner where you can't get anything. At some point you'll know, okay, this is what my market is, and I'm going to take the best deal based on the market in your league, right? And it's going to be different for every league.
Yeah. Right. People always need a running back, and they'll always love the name. And you folks listening to this show are probably a little more advanced of a fantasy player than the average, jack off in your league. Not every guy is watching every single game. There's guys with kids. I know guys in my home league, good buddies of mine, they don't even watch games. They're mispronouncing guys' names left and right. They're like, oh, this guy didn't play. I didn't know that. So trust me, you can pull some things over on guys here and there. Let's keep it rolling here. And a favorite of the hustle. Let's turn things on a positive note. Zack Moss. He's now my running back one because my team is so terrible in that league. But he looked like the closer we thought he was, man. 14 rushes, 81 yards, and a score for the Bills. Snaps and touches, they're getting pretty close with Singletary. His routes run were actually dead on tied with Singletary, but there's one stat, Dwain, that is not close. And I'm sure we've been saying it all year, but you can explain to the people what stat that is.
Yeah, I mean, he gets all the work, down inside the 5. Singletary doesn't get that. But like you said, this is almost as close to 50-50 as you can be, right? And last week, he actually took the lead, Drake, for the first time. If you look at all snaps, including any penalties, anything like that, 53% of the snaps to Moss, right? So he slightly edged out Singletary for the first time. Singletary had 48%. Just like you said, they were dead on in routes. And then if you look at, their utilization, from targets perspective, Singletary had a little bit more, but rushing attempts, they were right there together. But in the 2-minute offense, Singletary gets that work. But on the third, on long down and distance, Zack Moss is actually creeping up. He's starting to see some of that work too. So they're getting him more involved. I like Moss better, Drake, just because I think he's just so much more, I feel like, pliable. Like, okay, you need somebody to run between the tackles and run hard and get 2 yards. He's your guy. You need a guy that can pass block. He can do it. You want him to work out in the flat or run an angle route down the field. Yeah, he's not quite as good as Singletary there, but he can do that. And he's better at the other 2 things we just named than Singletary. Oh, you got a guy that you just want to punch it into the end zone because you don't want Josh Allen taking all those hits. Zack Moss is your guy. So I feel like Moss can do everything that Singletary can. He can't quite make people miss the same way, but he can make someone miss or run over them. Singletary has one option: make someone miss. So I just feel like he's like, I can do more with him if I'm a coach. I'm kind of like, I can have Moss in the game and basically do everything. If I got Singletary, I kind of gotta like tailor things down to who he is. And so I like Moss better, And to me, when I watch them, like, I don't want to say Moss is like electric because he's not super fast, but he's just runs with an edge, He just, it kind of, I don't want to invoke like, the ire of everyone like in the chat room, but like it reminds me, of like he just runs angry, like a Marshawn Lynch type, So I don't think he's Marshawn Lynch by any means. Like he's not the athlete Lynch was, but he just kind of has that edge to him, and I like that, in a back. And I think coaches, when they see that, that's something that, they're drawn to. So we'll see. I think Moss could slowly turn this into more where it's the 60-40. Of course, Josh Allen is really the RB1 down inside the 5. So you're always going to be dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
But Moss got the punch 2 in. So yeah, I mean, what was he, RB6 last week? So, and dude, I felt great about it because I think I had him in 4 out of 21 lineups because I had to due to bye weeks and injuries. 2 weeks before that, I got really lucky with when DeAndre Swift went off in a similar situation. Last week, I had to start J.K. Dobbins in 2 leagues. So it's like I've been, I'm happy with some of this production we're getting out of some of these guys in random spots.
All right, we got a question here. You mentioned the Ravens backfield. If Ingram comes back to ruin Gus, which I don't necessarily think he ruins him, I think Gus still keeps the same role. Am I better off rostering Lat Murray or Foreman or hold? So I guess he means hold Gus.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather own Lat Murray than Gus Edwards just because really you don't want to start either one of those guys, but they're the same if you need to. But Murray has so much more value if Kamara goes down, right, than what Gus does because Gus is going to – Dobbins dominated the snaps last week. Even though they shared carries, Dobbins doubled up Gus Edwards in snaps because Dobbins gets all the long down and distance. He gets all the 2-minute work. Dobbins is the guy to own, and he's the one we're starting right now. Even with Ingram out, I consider Edwards a low-end RB3 that I'd rather not start.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the point in keeping someone like that? He needs Dobbins to be gone as well. Mm-hmm. So I would rather own Lat Murray.
I hope you guys were saving a spot on your bench for a super upside guy because one's about to become a top 10 wide receiver, and his name's Antonio Brown, and he's going to make his debut for Tampa Bay on Sunday Night Football against the Saints. All right, guys, he's living with Tom Brady, okay? He's going to dominate from day one. Chris Godwin is not a lock to play. He's still got the finger in a cast and all this. Mike Evans is out there being, slow Mike Evans doing what he does. AB runs the routes that Brady wants to throw, Dwayne. Like, I watched that game the other night and I go, my God, this offense needs a guy like Antonio Brown. Like, Tom Brady is going to feed him like you feed your infant child at dinner time. Like, I'm saying it right now. Like, he's going to be a top 12 wide receiver the rest of the year. Maybe I'm crazy, but it makes too much sense. And then he's going to be gone in a week. But for this week, he's going to kill it. I'm guaranteeing 25 catches, 200 yards, 11 touchdowns this week.
Yeah. You might see it this week. I just don't see it being long-term because they spread the ball around. I mean, and it's not like Brady's hurting. The dude throws 3 to 5 touchdowns every game. So it's not like he needs Antonio Brown. It's not like he's got to have, I think what Antonio Brown's going to do, he's going to come in, he's going to immediately take over Scotty Miller's role. He's going to be used more deep than what we think. But I think at the same time, to your point, I do think he can run the routes that Brady wants in the intermediate, in shorter areas of the field at very critical times. Because, those are things that aren't necessarily the strengths of Mike Evans. It's not that Mike Evans can't do it, but they really want Mike Evans outside pushing the vertical, boundary of the field, loosening things up for Godwin and these other guys underneath. But I think what happens is, he's going to basically take over Scotty Miller's snaps. That's what's going to happen.
And Marcus Johnson. I mean, those guys play a lot. Or Tyler Johnson. Tyler Johnson.
Well, they play a lot whenever Chris Godwin's hurt. Otherwise, they don't. Like, they see 10, 20%, as they rotate guys around. The thing is, Godwin's been hurt most of the time, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, those guys are definitely getting to see, some work. But, yeah, I think Antonio Brown's going to have, his big weeks. I definitely think that. I don't think he'll be a top 12 receiver, for the rest of the way. I think he's in the top 24 conversation. I wouldn't be surprised if it's top 36. I think he will have wide receiver 1 weeks, for sure. Oh, yeah. But I just I don't see it being a thing where, oh my God, it's Brady locked on, right, to Antonio Brown and he's going to feed him. There's too many weapons, I mean, Godwin's eventually going to be healthy. And at that point, I think he's going to be the best receiver again, on the roster. And even if not, like, they're tied. So I think it's a deal where Brady, here's the thing. I think, like, Brady, he's a top 3 quarterback. We already, we had him as a top 6, or I had him as a top 6 anyway before the season started, but he's probably a top 3, the rest of the way. You've got Russell Wilson, at number 1, you've got Kyler Murray, right after that. And then you have a bunch of other guys right there, in that 3, 4, 5 range. And I think Brady's in that mix, obviously Pat Mahomes, right, is above that. But I'd put Mahomes above, Murray, even though Murray's ahead of him right now. But those are your top 3. And then you have Brady, and you got Josh Allen, and you've got, I don't know who else I'm missing, Drake.
Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray.
No, I already said Russell Wilson. He's at the top. Like, Russell Wilson's number 1. Kyler Murray, I said, is 2, which I would say Mahomes is 2, and then Murray's 3. But then after that, I think you have, Josh Allen and some other guys, but I think Brady would be my number 4.
I want to throw this out to the chat room, and Dwayne, I would love to get your answer too. Knowing what Antonio Brown has done in the past and what he's been accused of, and we know he's a complete jerk-off, would you let this guy live with your wife and kids and family in your home?
No. Well, and now the definition of what we call homes versus these guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, that Jeter palace he's living in is the size of my block.
Exactly. So Antonio Brown let's get this straight, does not live in Tom Brady's home. He lives in Tom Brady's residence, which is like, the blocks that we live on, right? So it would be like me. It would be like Antonio Brown living like 8 doors down across the street and me saying that Antonio Brown lives with me, right? So there's definitely a difference. But, I mean, obviously Brady, is doing the dude, a solid. And I think Brady, what he's probably doing, Drake, is the closer he can keep him to him, the less likely he is to blow it. That's it.
Giselle's in the kitchen, just like making pancakes or, whatever a supermodel does. And, Antonio Brown just comes like walking in his boxers like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Kids are getting ready for school. Like, there's a reality show here that needs to be filmed and put on immediately. Andy Cohen, get on this, Real House Husbands of Tampa Bay, get it on the air. Let's see, where else are we going here? How about Ronald Jones in the doghouse after a second quarter fumble? We love to just crap on Ronald Jones here on this show, but Fournette came in, led the backfield the rest of the way, 15 rushes, 6 targets. I mean, at what point it's over for Ronald Jones?
Yeah, I mean, well, we talked about this last week. They're using more 10 personnel. That all goes to Leonard Fournette. All passing down work, long down and distance goes to Leonard. Actually, long down distance and 2-minute work goes to anyone not named Ronald Jones. That's rule number 1. They don't. We talked about this. They literally hate Ronald Jones when it comes to putting him on the field in any sort of situation where he must be trusted. I know that's, oh my God, you're stretching things. Look, it is what it is. These people see these guys in practice every day. If you're not allowed to be on the field inside the 5 for the most part ever, unless everyone is injured, right, including 3 fans that they couldn't have on the bench. And when everybody's injured, you're still not allowed to play any passing downs. I think that, and that's not just this year, that's last year. I think that tells us everything we need to know. They do not trust Ronald Jones to do anything except on first and second down, take handoffs when Brady's under center. If you're going to be in shotgun, you're any kind of obvious passing situation, Leonard Fournette's getting all of it, man. So last week I said I would call them both RB3s, and Jones is running the ball well when he's just, the one thing they want him to do, he is doing well. But now, again, this isn't the first time he's fumbled. Fournette didn't look that great running the ball, but they like his pass protection. They like him in the passing game. They're designing pass plays for him. Gets all the long down distance, gets all the 2-minute work, getting a lot more, his work is building steam inside the 5, as far as his snaps and his carries. So, yeah, I think now you've separated. It's Leonard Fournette's an RB2 the rest of the way, and Ronald Jones is an RB4.
Mike Davis, I salute you. You are your watch is complete. You may step down now. CMC is likely to return, but folks, do not drop Mike Davis. I had a guy who I've been buddies with for years call me today. He goes, "Hey, can I drop Mike Davis now that CMC's coming back?" I go, "No." Mike Davis is a premier handcuff in the vein of Alexander Madison. Like, if something goes wrong with CMC again, and a high ankle sprain is very vulnerable to re-aggravation, Mike Davis is back in business, folks. Do not drop him.
I agree. Don't drop him.
Just want to throw that out.
You want to drop Tony Pollard at this point? I don't care, but don't drop Mike Davis.
No. Our boy DJ Moore, another quiet night though on Thursday Night Football last week. 2 for 55. That mostly came late on one throw. Broke his string of 3 straight 93-yard performances. Do you know how hard it is to not just get 93 yards in a game in the NFL, but do it 3 consecutive weeks? That's pretty crazy. What do you see in here? I know we're looking at Robbie Anderson, who's a top 12 wide receiver right now in PPR, but DJ Moore has been a guy we've been high on for a number of years. I mean, is he someone at the trade deadline you'd be looking to move from, or you'd be wanting to bring on your roster?
Dude, I don't get it. It's like, oh, DJ Moore had another quiet game. Like, well, when was the last one? Like 6 weeks ago? 5 weeks ago? It's like, I don't know what the deal is with DJ Moore, where people just like, there's this narrative that literally he has one good game out of every 5. But if you really compare him, right, to the rest of receivers, and you're not, just stuck on some presumptive thing that whatever it is, right, that's stuck in your head. I mean, he's wide receiver 16 in PPR ranks right now. So he's a top 24 wide receiver. He was a top 15 last year. He was a top 33 wide receiver as a rookie. He's an offense that's playing well, that has weapons that they spread the ball around some. I just don't know, like asking if, I don't know. It's like, okay, do I want to trade DJ Moore? It's like there's so many other receivers that I can think of that are in the same exact boat that no one ever talks about trading, right? Mm-hmm. That no one's like, oh man, should we trade this guy? And they're the exact same thing as DJ Moore. But for some reason, DJ Moore is the one everyone wants to say that about. And I guess it's because Robbie Anderson's been such a surprise. But even though Anderson's outperforming him, and I think that's fine, and Anderson may keep doing that, Moore still is holding the value basically that you paid as a 4th-round pick. Most of you took him in the 4th or 5th round of your fantasy drafts. If you played in a really sharp league, he might have been a 3rd-round pick, but typically he was a 4th or a 5th-round pick, and you've got a wide receiver 16. Like, to me, that math says, wow, I have a good pick, and I'm just going to play him every week. That's what it says to me. So I'm much more likely to buy on DJ Moore than I am to sell.
Do you have any players that, off the top of your head, you could tell our audience, guys who you'd want to trade for here at the deadline as it comes up in a lot of fantasy leagues over the next, call it 2 weeks, 10 days?
Here would be, just real quick, here would be my examples. Do you want to trade Will Fuller right now? This is the same thing as DJ Moore, pretty much. Like, if you go look at their performances, right? You could probably put him in the same range as Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's a little bit more up and down, doesn't have quite the big play ability. But they're similar. I would put him ahead of Justin Jefferson, but Justin Jefferson's in a similar range. Do you want to trade away Justin Jefferson right now? That's the kind of stuff that you have to ask yourself. I don't know what it is with the name DJ Moore, but so you're saying, I'm sorry, guys that I would want to trade for?
Yeah, give me a couple of names. People are always asking us, hey, my deadline's coming up. Who are players you want to acquire at the trade deadline? People you think are going to have a great rest of season, and you wouldn't mind, sticking your neck out and bringing on your roster.
Yeah, so I think the key, right, to making these kind of trades, you've got to find players that they're below market, value, right? Because you don't want to go overpay. I don't need to tell you guys which guys, great. If you can go get Julio Jones or DK Metcalf, of course you're going to do it. If you can get Tyler Lockett, you're going to do it. If you can get DeAndre Hopkins, you're going to do it. So we'll leave all those guys out, right? So what you got to do is you got to look at guys like DJ Moore as an example, someone that for whatever reason there's a stigma, right? And people are always saying, "Oh, I'm going to sell high when I can." Okay, great. I'm gonna go buy him from you, right? Player Justin Jefferson, would be another one. Deontay Johnson would be another one. We know Deontay Johnson, as long as he's healthy, is going to see plenty of targets. Now, there's plenty of mouths to feed in Pittsburgh. I know this last week he didn't come up, with anything, but it was just a really weird game. Dude, I would trade for Travis Fulgham. If for whatever reason somebody's still not a believer, you can speak to that one, Drake. Every week the guy gets 10 targets. So it's guys along that line, right? Higgins, guys that are in that top 24 that a lot of guys in your league that own them may be thinking, man, I've been lucky that he's done this. Or they may not even realize what T Higgins is actually ranked, right?
Right.
So I would be a buyer. Those are the kind of guys Marquis Brown, I would still be interested in buying, right? The Ravens overall, their offense isn't doing what it was last year, but Brown has plenty of, he's got plenty of air yards. He's a top 2 target in the offense. He's still going to have some of those big games. Trying to look here, Drake. I'm just looking through some of my names. A guy that I would keep an eye on that he may be available, but super cheap, right? John Brown. He's just been hurt. But we saw what Brown did last year. We even saw the targets he got early this season before he got hurt. Now, they've been dealing with weather in the last several games, and that's really slowed down the Bills' offense. But John Brown has really been hurt for about 4 weeks, and now he's going to be coming back healthy. He's a guy to keep an eye on, super, super cheap. Jerry Judy, abso-freaking-lutely. I wrote about him last week in the utilization article. He's finally healthy. This last week, Drake, he played the most snaps he's played all year, and he played outside. He wasn't just the slot receiver. KJ Hamler was the slot receiver. Deshaun Hamilton replaced Tim Patrick, who was out with a hamstring on the other side. So now you're seeing Jerry Judy is going to be playing all downs. He's going to play inside. He's going to play outside. And I talked about hints of that occurring last week, and it fully came true this past week. He saw 10 targets. His air yards are through the roof for a guy that's actually been dinged up, quite a bit. Right now, I pulled up just now, Fantasy Pros rest of the season ranks. They got Jerry Judy at 48. They got him below Cole Beasley. They got him below Sterling Shepard. below Christian Kirk. I put him above all those guys. They're going below CeeDee Lamb and Darius Slayton and Mike Williams. I put him ahead of all those guys. Brandon Cooks is a buy. Jarvis Landry is a buy. Jarvis Landry didn't come up big on the box score last week, but just like I talked about in the utilization article, dude, 10 targets, 40% of the targets was seeing play action looks. They're trying to integrate him into the passing game. And Jarvis Landry is a good player. He just still is not fully healthy either. He's been dealing with a hip injury the whole year. Now he gets a bye week. He gets 2 weeks. They're just going to let him sit. They're not going to make him do anything. Jarvis Landry, you can get for nothing. You can get Jarvis Landry for zero right now. He's a great player to go add. Now, remember, he's on bye week, this coming week.
That's a good thing, though.
Brandon Cooks is the next guy that people think of like DJ Moore. Oh, just when's the sky going to fall? When's the sky going to fall? It's not. The player just now is in a groove with his quarterback. The trade deadline's done. They're just going to come out and sling it. They're going to be behind all the time. And he and Deshaun Watson have a good thing going right now. Brandon Cooks is going to be a top 24 wide receiver. You can probably get him, for pretty cheap, So those would all be guys from a receiver,
perspective,
that I would be going after. Let me switch over to backs, Drake.
I got a receiver for you too. People,
you go.
People don't like injured players, and a lot of times you can steal guys on buys or players who still have buys remaining.
Mm-hmm.
And next week, this guy's on bye, and he's been out for a few weeks. How about Jameson Crowder of the Jets? When he's played, he's only played in a couple of games, 4 games this season. In a half-point PPR, he's had 21, 14, 21, and then 8 points. And then he's got a bye tonight. Weekend.
He was free tonight in one of my high-stake, really deep leagues. Yeah, I dropped half of my fab remaining on him. And then I just put a min bid on Braxton Berrios, and I dropped our buddy Josh Kelly to just carry both, right? And I'll start whichever one starts. You got to watch the bye week, so you got to watch that. Get out from under Clyde Edwards-Helaire if you still can. If you still got name value. But wow, 2 weeks in a row, and yes, they've led. So again, the game scripts could have been a problem for Edwards-Helaire 2 weeks in a row because they've blown the other team out. But here's my problem, Drake. Even if that's the case, what does this show us? It shows us he's no longer game script proof. Mm-hmm. If the Chiefs get out to a lead, which what does that offense do? It kicks ass. They're going to lead a lot. He's in a situation where now all of a sudden it's 3 backs. It's Edwards. It's basically turned into what Detroit was at the beginning of the season. A third of it to Edwards-Helaire, a third of it to Le'Veon Bell, and then 10 to 20% instead of Kerryon Johnson goes to Darrell Williams. It's a disaster. It's an absolute freaking disaster right now for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's still going to have some big games, so maybe you wait for him to pop and score 2 touchdowns or something, and then you move him, and then you bitch me out when he does it 2 weeks in a row after that because the Chiefs are in close games, and I can't help that. But you're just going to have to live with the ups and downs. I'd rather sell high for someone, more consistent if I can find it. I'm just looking here, Drake. Dude, Phillip Lindsay looks better than Melvin Gordon. He's better. He's a better player than Melvin Gordon at this point.
You want to know who I got in a trade for Ezekiel Elliott? I've texted you this. So
I won't say. You go ahead.
I traded the guy in my league. He's a good fantasy player. He knows his stuff. He's won this league a couple of times. I gave him Zeke, Pollard, and Gus Edwards, who I believe he started this week. And I got back Adam Thielen, Phillip Lindsay, and Le'Veon Bell. So I got a couple of running backs who are they world beaters? No. But I got Adam Thielen. I got Adam Thielen, who I'm going to plug in, and he's hopefully most weeks going to give me 15 points in a PPR, half-point PPR. And I think Phil Lindsay's a fine RB2 flex. And you kind of work from there. And you have the ultimate handcuff now in Le'Veon Bell. I love having guys like Le'Veon Bell on my roster because let's say in the next few weeks something does happen to CEH and you can get him for a supreme discount. I mean, that's how you frame it to your league mates. You go, hey, listen, I want to trade for Le'Veon Bell. I know he's on your bench. You're never really sure about playing him. And plus, oh, by the way, now he's only a handcuff / timeshare guy. So you don't have to pay RB1 price for him. If something happens to CEH, I mean, you're killing it with Le'Veon Bell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Those are the guys that you want to stash, for sure. That can carry you to fantasy championships. Like I've had so many years where I had an RB1 and literally my second running back was a mixture of the guys you're talking about. And it was no one for the whole season. It was a mixture of 4 guys for 3 weeks at a time, like you get a Mike Davis and then Mike Davis goes away because McCaffrey, comes on, comes back. And then you get something like a Le'Veon Bell because CEH, has an issue. So, I think I hit most of them on the backs. Like there's not as many because, people cling to the latest thing with the running backs, right? So It's harder to go buy low, right, on a back. But if I am a little worried about James Robinson at this point, we've loved him on the show, but man, if the Jags decide to shut it down and just start tanking, and they don't bring Minshew back, which Minshew, look, he's not great, but he's kept them competitive, right? He keeps their offense competitive and in games. Like we have no clue what Lutton is. If he sucks, and we do know what Glennon is. Glennon sucks. if Lutton sucks, that's just bad, right? You get into these trailing scripts. The other team knows, oh, Lutton sucks. All we got to do is take away James Robinson. That's a really bad situation to be in, especially when you don't have a great offensive line. You've got a below average offensive line. So James Robinson, I'm not saying go sell him, guys, just for anything, but, and maybe Minshew will get back in there, but we know we're at least going to see Lutton this next week. And I'm a little worried, about what that's going to mean. So keep an eye on that. You gave the right advice, Drake, though. If you can pick up Miles Sanders, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, any of these guys, like if you can make a move with someone that's desperate, right, because they need to win now, and you've got the capability to pull a move off to get, a player like that could still miss a couple more games for you. I'm guessing Miles Sanders will be back after the bye, but the other guys probably have another game or two they're going to miss. They're saying Chubb could be back by week 10. Like, do it now. Like, go try to get it done now.
Let's do some rapid fire here before we wrap things up. All right. Good God. 2 QB league, Dwain. Mullins. I want to say it's Luton. We're going to go with Luton. Or
Isn't
Kyle Allen.
Well, Jesus. This is terrible. Like, you got to start both of these guys, or just you need one?
Let's just pray it's one.
Yeah, I have no clue, honestly, about Jake Luton. I don't know. Mullins is not going to have any weapons, right? So I'm out on him. I'm going to go with Kyle Allen, he's not great, but he's been okay. He and McLaurin, got a little something going there, before the bye week. So they've got to match up with the Giants. It should at least be a competitive game. So I would go with Kyle Allen. I would not trade. There was a question, CEH for Phil Lindsay. I wouldn't do that, and here's why. You can still get more for CEH than Phil Lindsay. So get Phil Lindsay and something, right, for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, that's the kind of move that I would try to make. Clyde Edwards-Helaire for Miles Sanders, absolutely. I would get Miles Sanders in a heartbeat over Clyde. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, what do you see him as, Drake? At this point, like, to me, he's a boom bust RB2, which really means he's an RB3 that could, and for me right now, the rest of the way, just with the way things look.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, they're just going to keep, if they're blowing teams out too, now you can mix in, they're giving these other scrub backs run. They did it against the Jets. It wasn't just, oh, hey, we're blowing them out, let's put Lev Bell in. They're giving every other jackwagon.
They're using 3 guys. The week before it was Washington before they moved him. This last week it was Darrell Williams. Aaron Jones replacement this week. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. Drake hit on it. We're not actually for certain. What I would say is it will probably be Dexter Williams playing. We'll get more of the run. As far as the running back. The rushing attempts, I would say he'll get at least half of those. And I would say Irvin will get maybe a third of the rushing touches. and, he'll pick up the targets that Williams and Jones leave on the table. I think where Irvin could give you value this week is, he maybe picks up 6-7 targets.
Yeah. Would you rather own Boston Scott over Joshua Kelly if you own Sanders?
Yes, absolutely. Would I want CEH or Chris Carson? I would want Chris Carson. Again, to your point, I do get leery with just Seattle and the way they report injuries. It could literally be a thing where you're just chewing your gum real fast. You're smiling. You probably do a better impression than me, Drake, saying, Chris Carson, he's going to be a game time decision. We could hear that for 3 weeks in a row. That does worry me, because he is the type of coach that, Pete Carroll, he'll absolutely do that.
The guy could be in a body cast and we go, it's game time decision. Really, coach?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he could string that along for multiple weeks on you. So be careful with Chris Carson.
Jarek McKinnon worth a roster spot. Wilkins and Breida are available on the wire.
McKinnon's absolutely still worth a roster spot. You just got to get, through, this week. And what's the deal with McKinnon? Does he have it too? I didn't even see McKinnon.
No, he's
out.
He's alive and well. He's doing okay.
Well, he may have to line up a receiver this week. Yes,
he McKinnon, can run out of the slot. Sure.
Yeah, McKinnon's. I want to own McKinnon over Wilkins. Who was the other option? McKinnon. I don't know.
Would you cut?
I want to own McKinnon. Sorry, go ahead.
Would you cut Cam Akers for Landry? I'd rather have
Jarvis Landry. Absolutely. Yeah, in a heartbeat. There was another one. Damien Harris, is he a viable option weekly? No. He should be this week, against the Jets. If the Patriots can keep the game close, he'll be fine. But basically the most he's going to see is 40 to 50%, of the snaps. He's going to see about 50% of the rushing attempts. Basically, he is Sony Michel. He's the Sony Michel now. Rex Burkhead's still Rex Burkhead. James White's still James White. Cam Newton's going to poach, carries inside the 5 still. Unfortunately, their offense just never gets there. And so Harris did break a decent run last week. He's looked solid, but he's not somebody that I want to trust every week. If you're in a really deep, a large league, I think he's an RB3 in that scenario. If you're in a shallow to, mid-size league, I really just want him, more on my bench or a bye week filler.
Would you trade Noah Fant and Will Fuller for Miles Sanders? I have Cooper on the bench.
Yes. I don't know who your receivers are, but yes, I think you get the best player in the deal. Yes. Amari Cooper for Melvin Gordon, or Amari Cooper and
Gordon for Joe Mixon.
I mean, dude, Cooper, he's a scrub at this point, right? I mean, Melvin Gordon's in a timeshare. I wish Joe Mixon was healthy because he's got a foot thing too. It's so I don't know for sure, but if I thought Mixon, and you do own Geo, yes, I would do it, Drake. I would do it. And look, me, I bag on Mixon because of his lack of a role in the passing game. But yes, I would make that deal.
Folks, it's week 9. I can't believe we blinked an eye. We joked about it early in the season. We're going to just wake up one day and, oh my God, it's week 9. It's week 10. Well, guess what it is? So there's no time for sitting around and being complacent in your fantasy leagues. Playoffs in fantasy football, folks, start in week 14. So you don't have a lot of time to waste. You got 5 regular season weeks left. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's it. So if you're sitting at 3-5 or 4-4, whatever it is, you got to get cooking. Make some moves and dump the guys at the end of your bench who aren't going to help you. Play to win. And by the way, never get out hustled. For Dwain McFarland, I'm Brian Drake. We'll see you next week, folks. Take care.